Howdy, y'all. Guess who it is? It's your old friend, the recovered alcoholic again. Here back to bring you another episode of Deep and Effective Big Book Study. And today, guys, gals, we're going to be doing episode 16, which is starting step 4. We're going to be starting the inventory process with this episode, right? And we have 3 things that we're going to inventory. One is resentment, one is fear, one is sex. So we're going to make an episode for each one of those resentment inventories. As always, we like to invite God into this thing. So I'm going to take a quick moment and read the set-aside prayer. If you care to join me, that's fantastic. If not, I'm going to read it anyway. So let's take a quick moment of silence and invite God. God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the 12 steps, and especially you, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me to see the truth. Okay. Got the big chief in the house. Let's ready to move on. So here's the point in the episode where I ask you guys to please like, subscribe, and share this video. The more subscribers we get, the better the YouTube algorithm will be, and the more opportunity that people will have to see this, to get exposed to this channel. I'm going to drop in my email. It's recoveredalcoholic1939@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, concerns, by all means, drop me a message. Men and women, you're looking for sponsorship, please reach out to me. Guys, I can get you hooked up with the spiritual experience. And ladies, I can get you in contact with some other women who are very well versed in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Also, if you're looking for any meetings, some solution-based Big Book stuff, please privately message me or email me, and I will get you that information. And since this is the Deep and Effective Big Book Study, we're going to go to page 25, and I'm going to read. Middle of the page, friends. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is that the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. Okay, guys, so let's get right down to business, shall we? Let's pick up where we left off. And we're going to be picking back up on the top of 64, right? So let's kind of recap, right? We've just come off of this 3rd step prayer, right? And the book is very clear when we do our 4th step, which is next, now, immediately. This is when we go right into the inventory process. There is no such thing as I'm working on the 3rd step. So this idea that I'm having trouble making the decision in step 3, the reality of it is I've already made the decision, and the decision was that I don't believe that I'm step 1. So everything we do has to come back to the solid foundation that we have in our 1st step experience. The entire program rests upon that. And we now know that the principle behind the 3rd step is faith. Faith with humility, right? So that's going to lead us into the 4th step principle, which is courage. Courage with humility. And I'm going to jump ahead real quick before we get going into the resentment part. And we go to page 68, and this is already in the fear aspect of the fear part of the inventory. And I'm going to read something to you. So the paragraph where it says we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. So what they're telling, right? If the principle behind the 3rd step is faith and the principle behind the 4th step is courage, right? So this is where I'm going to be marrying these 2 principles together, because it's going to take all the courage I can get, all the courage I can muster to go through this process. You know, the disease of alcoholism is an ugly, painful, uncomfortable thing. Well, so is the recovery process, right? The stripping away of my pride and my ego and my character defects is painful, and it's scary, and I don't want to do it, right? I get it, but I'm willing to do it because I understand that my life depends upon it. So when I understand that faith and courage go hand in hand, I understand that the principle behind the 4th step is all about courage. Okay, back to 64, my friends. And we only have 1, 2, 3, about 4 pages for the resentment part, right? So I'm pretty much going to read verbatim, all right? And remember, the first 3 steps are absolutely useless if I'm not willing to continue on with the program. And how do I know if I've done a 4th step? Well, I did a 5th step. That's how I know I've done my 4th step. Here we go. Therefore, we started upon our personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. If that isn't highlighted in your book, it needs to be, because we're going to talk about it. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. This next sentence is important. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. And that's what the inventory is about, right? So before we get into this, I want to talk about something and give a little disclaimer, my friends. Right? The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in the inventory process is just that. It's about inventory. It's not designed to be therapy. Now, saying that doesn't mean this process isn't therapeutic. Oh my God, has it been therapeutic for me and countless others. I speak with people all the time about what has been uncovered as a result of the inventory process, right? And we're going to get into some things real deep here, guys, with our past, if you will. So I don't want to discredit and I don't want to take away from anybody's experience who's having greater depths of awakenings with therapy aspect of this through the inventory. But I have to put the inventory first and everything else will follow. I'll keep reading. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which had caused our failure. So we're going to see the same thing repeated over and over and over within this process, is that the inventory is about character defects. Now, will other things get uncovered as a result of shining a light on these characters? Yes, right? And I promise you, if that's not happening, you're not going deep enough, okay? Right? The surface, we're going to get the light on the surface. What we're going to do later is get deeper, right? And that might mean I need to pursue other avenues for things that have happened in my life, right? This process might lead me to where I need to seek professional help for very specific things in my life, right? And that's nothing wrong with that, right? Our book encourages us to do that. But on the surface, we want to be getting down to the character defect, because these are the things that are blocking me from God. Okay, you know, we hear this term a lot, and again, I'm not trying to poo-poo on anything, but we talk about our secrets keep us sick. And I got to tell you, that's not exactly accurate. What actually keeps me sick is the fear surrounding the secret. It's the dishonesty surrounding the secret. It's the shame. It's the guilt. It's the remorse. It's all about the character defects. That's what's really keeping me sick. See, today, keeping a secret is now a character asset for me, when before it used to be a liability, right? Today, I've heard I don't know how many, countless fifth steps, and I've had countless other people confide very close personal information to me, and I now have the ability to keep that as a secret. So it's a character asset. It's not the secret that's keeping me sick. It's the fear and the shame and the guilt and all that other ugly stuff that surrounds the secret. So when I'm here to search out my flaws in my makeup, right? Being convinced that self manifested in various ways what had defeated us. So again, this is what's defeating me. It's the self and the 100 forms that it comes in. We are considered as common manifestations, right? And the common manifestations that the most common, right, is going to show up in a resentment, it's going to show up as fear, and it's going to show up in how I've harmed and treated the other people in the world, in my sex inventory. Right? I'm going to read something now, very, very important. Resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. Right? I can read that in this book and go, yeah, okay, I make sense of that. Sure, I can see resentment's #1 offender. Sure, I can see where it's going to destroy more alcoholics. And sure, I can see where from it stem all forms of spiritual disease. But do I really understand why it's the #1 offender? Why it destroys more alcoholics? Why from it stem all forms of spiritual disease, right? Because here's what I've come to believe, what I understand, is that when I am in a continual state of resentment, what I really am is in a continual state of judgment. And if I am in a continual state of judgment, what role am I playing? Well, that takes us all the way back to Sage 62, when they said, this is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God, because that's what I'm doing when I'm living with these resentments. I am taking on the role of God. I am now judge, jury, and executioner of you. You should get what you deserve for what you did to me. So this is why it's the number one offender, because it's the number one thing that blocks me from God, because I am taking his role. And if I am in God's role, how on earth could there possibly be any room for him? And there can't. Right? And here's another thing, if you want to look further down the line in the steps and look further down the process in the principles, right? And how they all intermingle with each other. And this is this beautiful ballet that these principles coexist with one another, right? And what we're going to be setting ourselves up is the principle behind the 8th step, which is brotherly love, right? And this is going to be about forgiveness, right? Because what the inventory process is going to do, what it's designed to do, is level the playing field, right? It's for me to start to understand that the people that have harmed me are sick. It's the same reason that I've harmed you, is because I'm sick, right? And this is what the process is all about. It's all about forgiveness and becoming one with God and my fellow man, my fellow woman. So again, when I really start to study the big book, I see these things that I never saw before. They're hiding in plain sight. And here's one of them. It says, for we have not only been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick. So does everybody understand what the order, the process of recovery is? There's a very specific order on how we recover, and it's non-negotiable. It's also the same order of how we relapse, and it's right here on the bottom of 64. It says, listen to this, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So this is the order of recovery. I have to become spiritually fit first. That is the objective. When I become spiritually fit, then the mental obsession will be relieved. And if the mental obsession is relieved, then I won't fall back into actually physically taking a drink and being back to active alcoholism, right? And the order of recovery is non-negotiable. I can't try to get mentally fit. I can't go try to get physically fit. I have to get spiritually fit first, and then the disease of alcoholism will fall into place, right? Because the solution to the two-part disease, the mental and the physical, right? The phenomenon of craving and the mental obsession, the unmanageability of the mind, the solution to that is what it talks about on 44. The solution is a spiritual experience. It's the only thing that's going to conquer that. So I see the order of recovery right here. Spiritual, mental, physical. I also see the order of relapse right here. Because if I take the spiritual recovery part out of my program, out of my life, if I remove God from my life, well, now I'm going to open myself up for the mental obsession to return. And over enough time, over enough irritability, over enough restlessness, and over enough discontentness, I am going to pick up another drink, physically go back into active alcoholism. Right? So we hear this a lot in the rooms that, well, I went back out and I relapsed. I took a drink and I relapsed. And here's the thing. The relapse is over when I take a drink. The relapse starts long before the drink ever ends up in my hand. And what that looks like is I have stopped following directions. And I have now taken the only thing that prevents me from drinking out of the picture. I've removed God from my life. And when I do that, there's nothing standing in the way between me and a drink. So I hope that might clarify somebody. Another thing, in order to relapse, I must recover first, right? Because if I'm just not drinking, that means I'm just in between drinks, right? Just not drinking doesn't equate to recovery, right? That's another misconception that we have. Well, I relapsed again. Well, no, you never recovered. You never got well, so you didn't relapse. You just took some time between drinks. And another perfect example of how sobriety is not the solution to alcoholism. I'll keep going. So in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So here's the instruction, guys. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were hurt, with whom we're angry. So does everybody understand people, institutions, and principles? Right? The people, that's pretty simple. Right? I got that. I could list a whole bunch of people I'm pissed off at when I show up. But what about institutions or principles? So I'm going to give a couple examples of what institutions and principles looks like. And I'm going to use some extreme examples because, well, they're easy to recognize and everybody can identify with it one way or another. So how about the institution of gay marriage? Right? That's pretty controversial stuff. That's an institution that I can be prejudiced against or angry at. Organized religion. That's another institution. Any form of government, police, or authority, those are institutions. Right? Those are some good examples. Now, what about principles? What about the principle of pro-life or pro-choice? That's a pretty controversial thing, and most people have an opinion one way or another. What about pro-gun or all that type of stuff? Right? We could go on and on and on, but I just wanted to give a couple examples of what some principles and institutions look like, so I can better understand and be more specific in what I'm actually angry about. Okay? So as we ask ourselves why we were angry, this is a good question. In most cases, we found that our self-esteem, our pocketbook, our ambitions, our personal relationship, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were burned up. And what they're giving us is examples of pride, examples of ego. In most cases, almost all cases actually, that it's my ego, it's my pride. So on the grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sexual relations which had been interfered with? Again, this is about pride, this is about ego. Now look what they tell us. We were usually as definite as this example. Right? Which means specific, exact. Now, I'm going to say something right now, and I know it's going to sound controversial, and I know some people aren't going to like it, but if your inventory doesn't look like page 65, you haven't done the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Right? And we see 3 columns on this page, and we're going to get into the 4th column here in a minute. Right? And I'm not trying to take away from anybody's experiences. But the program of Alcoholics Anonymous does not include work packets and checklists and cheat sheets and whatever else is out there. Right? That's not the 4-step of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now let's break down and really look at what's on our diagram here. We have 3-column inventory, and this is going to be a 4th column, and that comes from page 67, which we'll get into. And again, the inventory is about character defects, is what the end result is going to be. It's inventory, not therapy, but I'm saying it doesn't mean that it won't be therapeutic, okay? So let's just look at what's hiding in plain sight. So we have, I'm resentful at. Who am I pissed off at? Well, we have a name. How simple is that? Look at the next column, the cause. All right, what do we have? And this is Bill Wilson's inventory, by the way. We have about 10 to 20 words, getting directly and straight to the point. Right? We're not here to write a novel, guys, and we're not here. So here's what happens. When I find myself writing page after page after page of what this person did to me, what I'm really doing is justifying my resentment, right? And that's not what we're here to do. We need to understand that the 4-step we should be treating like triage, okay? If I got in a car wreck and I'm all beat up and they rush me to the hospital and I've got a 6-inch gash on my head and I'm bleeding to death, but I also have a broken toe, what do you think the first thing they're going to treat? Right? They're going to stop the bleeding on my head. We'll get to that toe later. And this is how we need to understand about the inventory process, right? It's about what's here and what's now, because look at the tense that they wrote each cause, right? It's in the now. It's here and now with me, okay? And here's another thing. And I'm not trying to be controversial, but the inventory process, I'm not here to go back and write about everything that has ever happened to me in my life. So when we look in column 2, we see that we only have about 10 to 20 words. It's quick, straight to the point. And we also see what tense everything's been written in. Each example. Bill Wilson talks about right here, right now. So if I'm here with resentments and anger of things from my past, my childhood, we want to understand that if it's here with me now, it no longer has anything to do with my childhood. It is no longer about the past. It is now with me because I have brought it with me. Right? My resentments, I chose to bring with me. So that's why we're not going to spend weeks and months writing of every single thing that ever happened to me in my life. No. We need to get right down to the meat of the problem. What is burning you up right now? This is what we need to be inventorying. Because I need to get unblocked as quick as I can. Because that's when the mental obsession is going to be relieved. It talks about it in the fifth step promises. It says that the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared. Right? The quicker I get through this inventory, the quicker I can have the drink problem disappear. Right? This idea that we're supposed to be taking weeks and months and God knows what on inventory is a complete misrepresentation of what this is all about. If you get back into the history of this thing, some of these guys were doing this stuff in a day. Why can't we? Why do we think that we need to do it in any other way? So let's recap here. I've got a name. I've got 10 to 20 words about what this person did to me. Then I go into this third column, right? And I need to look at how is this resentment affecting the relationships in my life? How is it affecting me, my relationship with you, my relationship with God, my relationship with everything, right? And again, I'm not taking away from anybody's problems or experiences they've had in their life. Another thing that this process is going to teach me, and this is what the fourth column is about. See, I've played a victim my whole life. And I'm not saying that I haven't been a victim of harms. They're two different things, right? There's a difference between being a victim and then living like a victim, right? Because living like a victim is going to affect everything in my life. Does that make sense? We're not discrediting things that have happened to us. What we're talking about is how am I still hanging on to this stuff? Okay, so let's move on, right? We have our diagram. We have our three columns. The simplicity of this. Remember, they use the word simple 18 times to describe the program. And this is a perfect example of why it's so simple. A name, what he did, how it's affected my life. Let's move on. And we need to be writing this out. We're not doing worksheets and checklists and all that cheat sheet crap like I said. No. We need to be going through the process of putting pen to paper. I'll keep reading. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. So I want to take a minute and talk about thoroughness and honesty. Thoroughness and honesty are not about timely. Thoroughness and honesty are about the principles of humility, the principles of integrity, the principles of honesty and open-minded. This is what they're talking about. It's not about timeliness. It's about, am I doing the best I can or am I purposely omitting something? When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that the world and its people were often quite wrong. Boy, how true is that? To conclude that others were wrong was as far as Moses ever got. Well, that's as far as I ever got. There ain't no way I ever saw anything other than what you did. And here's what the usual outcome is, that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Again, people continue to wrong me, well, for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm allowing it. And number two, there's comfort in that victim role. Right? See, the victim never has to be accountable. The victim doesn't have to change. The victim gets all the sympathy. And I'm not saying that we can't be victimized, but we have to let that go. And this is what the inventory process is about. Sometimes it was remorse, then we restored ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Now, this next few paragraphs I'm going to read, they basically threaten our lives like 9 times. There's like 9 threats within these 2 paragraphs. It is plain that the life which includes deep resentment leads to only futility and unhappiness. To precise extent that we permit. See, we permit. See, I'm allowing all of this. Right? I'm chosen to be a participant in all of this. We permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? But with the alcoholic, listen to this, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. Right? It doesn't say that the hope of an alcoholic is sobriety. It doesn't say the hope of an alcoholic is just don't drink and go to meetings. No. It has nothing to do with that. My hope is through maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. Listen to this. This business of resentment is infinitely grave. That is death. That's a threat to my life. We found that it is fatal. What's outside the scope of that? For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. Right? Remember when I talked about the order of recovery is spiritual, mental, physical? Well, this is exactly what they're talking about. If I shut myself off from the sunlight of the Spirit, I will drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. Again, what's outside the scope of that? If we are to live, right? There's another promise, another threat. If you're to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. Does everybody know what brainstorm is? We have a completely different definition of it in today's society than they did in the 30s. So I'm going to read it real quick. So here's brainstorm, my friends. Fits of rage, sudden or violent disruptances of mind. Right? We have a completely different idea of brainstorming today. Right? So fits of rage, sudden and profound, right? This is what, and I can experience that. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholic, these things are poison. Right? It doesn't even say that alcohol is poison. It says my resentment, my anger is poison. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. My inventories is my key to the future, guys. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. So remember when I talked about earlier how this is setting us up for the principle behind the 8th step, which is brotherly love? This is all about forgiveness. I'm going to be looking at this from an entirely different angle. Right? I'm going to be looking at it from 2 different angles. Number 1, about forgiveness. And number 2, how I'm responsible for all of my resentments. Right? I'm not responsible for everything that happened to me. I want to make that very clear. But I am 100% entirely responsible for the resentment that I hold on to. We begin to see that the world and its people really dominated us. And that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? There's a question mark. Well, the answer's in the question. How? I'm through honesty, open mind, and willingness. That's how I'm going to escape all of this. We saw that these resentments must be mastered. But how? Again, there's a question mark. And again, the answer's in the question. We cannot wish them away any more than alcohol. This is, of course, we realize that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Oh, we're about to set this. Remember we're talking about forgiveness and brotherly love? Well, this is what the top of 67 is about. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. So we have 2 prayers right here. These are known as the sick man's prayer, the 4-step prayer, angry man's prayer. I've heard it called all these things. And here's the first prayer. We ask God to show us the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? And here's the second prayer. God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. So this is what I will learn in the 4th column, right? Is that the people who did these things to me, and they should get what they deserve, are sick. They're spiritually sick. And what I learn about myself is the things that I've done to you, and the reason I've done these things to you, because I too am spiritually sick. So what this will do is it will level the playing field. I will start to become one with you, God, universe. Right? Because the people that had caused me trauma, the chances are that they were caused trauma too, and they didn't know how to do anything else but that. And that spiritual sickness just continues to get passed on. So I'm going to continue up on 67, and we'll stop here when we get to the fear part. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. Again, I'm starting to see these people as sick. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to make a kindly and tolerant view of each other. Kindly and again, principle of 8-step brotherly love. This is about forgiveness. And now we're about to get into the fourth column, guys. So this is where the fourth column of our inventory comes from, right? There's a series of questions that we're going to be ask ourselves, right? And this is where we start to see that the very behaviors that I am holding you in contempt for, I am doing myself. So here it is. Referring to our list, putting out of our minds the wrongs others have done, right? I am going to completely remove what you've done and resolutely look for our own mistakes. Does everybody know what resolutely means? Well, here's the definition. Faithfully, marked by firm determination without a doubt. So this is what I got to understand now. This is what this fourth column is about. So think about it like this. You've got that 4-column paper in front of you with your inventory, right? You've written the first column, second column, third column. All right, well, now we're in the fourth column. I want you to just take your hand and cover column 2. Pretend it's not even there. Because this is what they're asking us to do. Completely remove column 2 from your inventory. And now we're only going to focus on column 4. Because the reason we're doing this is this is the only thing that I have the ability to change. This is my path to freedom, this fourth column. If I continue to live in column 2, I will remain sick. I will block myself from the sunlight of spirit. So I have to now exist in this fourth column. It's the only way that I'm going to get free. We resolutely look for our own mistakes, mine. I'm done looking at column 2, right? And here's a series of questions. Where have been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? So these are questions I have to ask, right? And then I have to answer them. We need actual, tangible answers. Give me an example. Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I self-seeking? Where was I frightened? Actually answer these questions. It's not just a check the box, check the list. No. We need to be putting this on paper. Listen to this. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely, right? Again, my hand needs to go over column 2. We're done talking about column 2 now. Entirely. Here's more questions. Where were we to blame? Right? That's what I need to be putting on. But where was I to blame in all of this? Again, not for what was done to me, but for my ownership of the resentment. The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, right? I'm not here to we're done talking about what you did. We're now here talking about what I did. We listed them, we placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs and honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. We want to treat this with a sense of urgency when we are sitting down with a newcomer and we're getting them into their inventory process. We want to have a sense of urgency with this because this is the very thing that's going to get us free from the mental upset. This is the very thing that's going to get us free from alcoholism, guys. So I encourage you to teach your people to keep it simple. So real quick, guys, let's recap. So we now understand that we're going to have a 4-column inventory, right? I could talk for days about this, but I'm not gonna because we need to keep these things short. And I'm not, and I hope I didn't say anything today that steps on toes. That's not my intention. But I have to, again, allow the big book to be my voice and my own experience to be my voice. I can't really do anything outside the scope of that. So when we pick back up, in the next episode, we're going to get into the fear inventory. And again, there will be 4 columns for fear inventory, and they come directly out of the big book. So I appreciate you staying with me and listening. Again, I'm going to drop in my email, recoveredalcoholic1939@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns. You're looking for sponsorship. If you're looking for any solution-based meetings, please hit me up. And from the bottom of page 164, may God bless you and keep you till then. So take care and much love.